Good morning from Maui, Hawaii, and it may not be morning wherever you are. This is Dog Lovers Live. I'm James Jacobson from Dog Podcast Network, and today we are joined by Erin Scott on the other side of the country, who has a podcast called Believe in Dog. And we're going to talk about that. Of course, what we do at Dog Lovers Live, which is our summer special, is we introduce you to podcasts and YouTube shows and channels that you might not have heard about before, but are probably of interest if you are a dog lover. Erin, thank you for being with us today.
Yes, thank you so much. Hello from Baltimore.
Hello from Baltimore. Baltimore. Now, do you say Baltimore?
Balmer.
Balmer. Is that it? And I'm actually from. We were talking before we went live. I am originally grew up in Montgomery County, which is just the neighbor to where you live. What county are you in?
I'm in Hartford in the suburbs.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So you have been podcasting since 2019.
Yes.
And tell us a little bit about Believe in Dog and what prompted you to start it.
Well, what prompted it was sort of a little bit of like a 40th birthday midlife crisis. But I had also just won my battle with breast cancer. And I was having this sort of, what am I going to do with the next chapter of my life? I had to kind of fight to get here, and what am I going to do? And my dogs were such a big part of me getting through cancer. I had amazing friends and family and husband support, but there's something special about the peace that your dogs can just let you be in the moment and not have to, assure everybody that you're okay and put on a happy face. And so it was really on my mind that, I was actually kind of a reluctant dog owner. It was my husband who wanted to get a dog all the way back in 2004.
That was Lucy, right?
Yes, Lucy was our first dog.
And that's way back in 2004.
Yes, and she's my podcast logo, actually.
Tell me how you became a reluctant dog owner, because that's an interesting journey.
Yes, I never had any pets growing up, really. We did get a bird, but I was in college at that point. So I was like dating this guy in high school, and his dog would come running out of the woods and be covered in mud and knock me over. And I was like, what is with these dogs, And so when we bought our first house, my husband was like really adamant, we have to get this dog. I want a female brindle pit bull. He had been picturing this dog for years. So I go on the website for our local.
And that's quite like, if you're a little hesitant about dogs and someone says, I want a pit bull.
I didn't even know enough to know that there were people who didn't like pit bulls. Yeah. But I went on the website for our local shelter, and right on the first page was a female brindle pit bull, and that was Lucy. So I was like, uh-oh, I guess I'm a dog owner now.
So you showed your husband?
Yeah, and he's like, that's our dog. Email him, call him right now. We're coming together. Like, he had been picturing this dog for years. And so that was our Lucy. And we had just kind of gone through some hard personal times. We had lost someone very close to us, and this was kind of a way to help heal our hearts. I was kind of hesitant about it, but it worked.
Tell me a little bit about that, because I think that dogs are so often there in transition points in our lives. And for someone who had never had a dog before, and you'd gone through this loss, and then all of a sudden this pit bull that did Lucy have the name Lucy when you adopted her, or?
No, she was actually, her shelter name was Diamond, because she had a diamond white patch of fur on the back of her neck. So, but my husband and I were jokingly calling her Lucifer, and then that just became Lucy.
God, I think that's probably a little. I don't think that would be good for the doggy ambassador, the pit bull ambassadorship, which we'll get into in a minute. So you'd gone through this personal tragedy, or someone close to you had passed, and you got the dog. And what did Lucy bring into your life?
There's peace. There's when it's hard to get out of bed some days, they give you a reason to get out of bed and to get moving. And, sometimes they, do silly things to make you laugh and smile. And when you're in a really, in a hard time, that can be everything. That can be the only good thing that happened to you that day. And so that's, what Lucy brought. And then we ended up adopting a second pit bull at that time named Kahlua, and they were just the best of friends and ended up teaching us so much about, dogs and leading to the future dogs that we had.
How shortly after Lucy did you adopt Kahlua?
I think it's about a year and a half later.
Okay. So I just want to go back a little bit because, you're someone who's like reluctant, and then your husband says, I want a brindle, and you find the brindle, and this is at a point when you have just lost someone. What were those first few hours and days like?
So, oh my gosh. So the day that we go to bring her home, she had just been spayed, and she was still a little woozy from the anesthesia. We actually picked her up, from a vet hospital. So, my husband's carrying her out. We put her in the back seat of the car. We're heading home. We're like kind of all excited. And somebody kind of stops short in front of us at a light. And so we had to stop, and like, boom, she falls off the back seat of the car. And we were like, oh my God, we're going to be the worst dog owners. We're already messing this up.
And she's a little loopy from the anesthesia, tongue hanging out a little bit. Like, that's funny.
And so then I remember the next morning I walked in, and we had put her in a crate overnight, and I let her out, and my husband was still sleeping, and she's just kind of like, is this okay? And I'm showing her, outside and giving her food, and, and then she eats food, like ravenously eats this food, and comes over and is kind of nuzzling up next to me. And I was like, oh, I get why people have dogs now. This is adorable,
So it didn't take long for you to fall in love with Lucy.
No, not at all. And the moment that really solidified it for me was I was reading a book one day, and I think that something in the book had made me start crying. And she just got up from like chewing her bone and kind of came over and jumped up on the sofa and snuggled up next to me and just, put her head on me. And I was like, oh my God, I was done for. I was a dog person.
That's all that it took. And then a year and a half later, you got Kahlua.
Mm-hmm.
And why did you decide to add another dog to your family?
Well, Lucy seemed to like playing with other dogs, and it wasn't super well thought out, but
it was an impulse decision. It was like, let's do it.
It was kind of, I call it like an informal rescue. Like a friend of a friend had found this dog. He already had 4 other dogs, and his wife was like, you cannot have a 5th dog. And they were afraid to take her. They didn't know what would happen if they took her to a shelter. And it was actually somebody that had met my dad, and my dad's kind of like, well, my daughter loves pit bulls. Let me call her. And so we did this like meet and greet, and they just got along famously, and suddenly we had another dog.
So you had dogs. Life was good. You're a paralegal is your day job, and you've been a paralegal for a while, right?
Yes, 20 years.
That means that you're good at research and stuff.
Yes.
And so how did that interest in dogs coalesce with your interest in research and stuff into creating Believe in Dog, the podcast?
Well, when I wanted to start a podcast, I was actually very fortunate that these friends of mine were doing a podcast. And so they, gave me this kind of tutorial on how to do it. But, through my research and through, I like going to different conferences where you meet different people in the pet world. And so I like had this, massive list of people that I'm always like, well, how did they get started in loving dogs? Did they grow up with dogs? What was it that came along and kind of changed their life and made them want to, leave their career to become a dog trainer or start this nonprofit or start, this company for themselves. And I'm always curious, I guess, about where other people got started and what their story is.
And how many episodes have you done so far?
I'll be dropping number 25 on Monday.
Cool. So what, one or 2 a month?
Yes.
Okay. And in your history, what are some of your favorite conversations that you had with fellow
Oh my gosh, I feel like all of them are my favorite when I'm doing them. I like getting to give a platform to the people who I know personally who are doing amazing things. I have a friend who left her corporate job. She's now a dog trainer. Her dogs have been featured in Chewy.com TV commercials and Mercedes-Benz commercials.
Her personal dogs or dogs that she
Yes,
trains?
her personal dogs, yes.
Wow. So that's an interesting transition. What kind of like corporate job did she have?
She was an executive assistant to the CEO of a Fortune 500 company.
Wow. Okay. So a big shift from that to like,
Yes.
I imagine being coiffed and dressed to being a dog trainer and rolling around with the dogs.
Right.
And then how did she turn that into, getting her dogs in TV commercials?
Well, her name is Di, and Di, she is a trick dog trainer. That was something that was like really interesting to her. Like her dogs could fetch a beer and do different things like that. And so just through networking, she managed to make the connections to the people who do casting. And her dogs have been live on QVC. They've been like dog models on QVC, and
That's a thing, dog models. Yeah.
yes, it is. And it's been
Stay.
really
No, seriously, stay. Yeah.
right. I know. I can't get them to stay,
Yeah.
but she does it professionally, and it's been really amazing to see the cool things that she's done.
Are most of the guests you have on your show people that you know either directly or tangentially?
It's been a mix, because it's been really awesome to connect with people like Dr. Zazie Todd, who does companion animal psychology. So when she put her most recent book out, I was able to send a request for an interview. And there are some other amazing people. Kim of Keep the Tail Wagging was one of my favorite people. And so it's always kind of a mix, sometimes they're introductions, through other guests. But it is always fun when I can, give a platform to somebody who I know personally doing things also.
And so if you had to come up with a theme or an elevator pitch for your show, how would you describe it?
I always say that the love of a dog can change your life and sometimes even change the world. And those are the stories that I'm sharing.
That is awesome. What do you ever get to a point where like you have to stop recording because you get so choked up in the story?
Yes. My friend Liz actually writes a lot about the loss of her dog and grief and dog owners going through hard times. And I know there's definitely times when we have been choked up talking about, some of these things.
So you, speaking of hard times, you said the start of this podcast kind of was a 40th thing, but you turned 40 and you said, I'll start a podcast, but it was also at the end of a breast cancer
Yes.
Journey.
Yes. In the same week, I turned 40 and became a breast cancer survivor in June of 2019. Yes.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
To what extent were your dogs helpful during the recovery process?
Well, maybe it's because of who I am as a person, but I always feel the need to sort of put on a happy face and ensure everybody that I'm okay. And with the dogs, you don't have to have that pretense, because they're not going to be like, oh my God, are you okay? Are you really okay? Are you sure you're okay? But one of the things that's honestly the most peaceful for me, my dog Penny loves car rides. There is just nothing in the world. She will walk away from a bowl of food if she thinks she gets to go for a car ride. And so that was kind of like a peaceful place for us, is if I just needed to, have some time to myself, Penny and I could hop in the car. We live, there's kind of a lot of rural back roads, past farms and stuff. We can ride by, have my 1990s rock music blaring. And it's just like a peaceful time just for us. I can watch her, head hanging out the window and see how much joy that's bringing her. And that kind of helped center me when I was getting too caught up in other things or just needed a break from being poked and prodded.
Was Penny a confidant? Were you able to talk to Penny about things that you may never have spoken to anyone else about?
I think that's a fair statement to make, yes.
What are some of the things that you confided in Penny about?
I guess fears or just concerns that I had, or even I was trying to keep up working full time. I was trying to keep up all of the other things that I was doing and kind of not let this get to me. And I could tell her when it was getting to me.
and she was very sensitive. Did you get the sense that she like knew what was going on?
I don't know per se, but I just always feel like they know. They just know, and they just know what you need. If I just needed to, go snuggle up and take a nap, she was always down for that too,
And on days that you had chemo,
Mhm.
and do you have radiation as well?
Yes.
So on the days that you had treatments, did she act any different?
I wouldn't say she acted different, but if I was acting different, she was okay with she would kind of take her cues from me. If I was just it's a not getting off the sofa day, um, if it's a I'm gonna go hang out in front of the toilet day.
She would be the companion
Just
watching
right,
you
yeah.
at the toilet, like, we're gonna hang out in the bathroom for a bit. Now, you had two dogs when you were going through the recovery, right?
Yes, yes.
And so talk about the compare and contrast. Talk about the difference between how the dogs helped you and what their approaches were to you when you were going through this period.
Well, Nino is our other dog, and he, if Penny's my girl, Nino is definitely my husband Tim's boy.
Yeah.
But we also jokingly call him Nurse Nino, because if you have like a scratch on you somewhere, like he's the first one to come over and be like licking it or something. So it was interesting because he would definitely kind of follow me around a little more concerned. So I don't know, Penny was sort of like the quiet, like, I got you, girl, I'm here. And Nino was kind of like, are you okay? Are you okay?
Did your friends and family think that was a little odd that Penny and you bonded so closely through this process?
I think we already were bonded, but I don't think it was a surprise to anybody that she was, I always say she's my BFF. So
Yeah. And then, of course, now cancer is not only prevalent in people, but dogs get it a lot. Are you concerned about that?
Oh, absolutely. We lost both Lucy and Kahlua to
Mm.
different forms of cancer. Lucy actually had what's kind of considered like a rare disease. And so it was a really interesting journey just to try to get her diagnosed and treated properly. And that's when I went like full dog health nerd and was learning everything that I could to take care of them. And I try to share some of that information on the podcast too for anybody who's going through that.
Talk to us, because that's actually a term. We're actually going to be putting out a show probably next year called Dog Health Nerd. But
Oh,
what is a dog health nerd in your vernacular?
well, I just research everything. I research everything from what I'm feeding
This
them.
goes back to the background as a paralegal.
Right. And I also do a lot of medical research through my work. There's an intersection there.
Mhm.
And so, yes, I research everything from what they're eating to what kind of, treatments we're using on them. I always say we used to go to the vet down the street. And after some bad experiences there, we learned what we're looking for in a vet. And that's honestly one of the things I think is most important is building a relationship with your vet who shares the philosophy that you want to use to treat your pets.
Yeah, so many people pick a veterinarian the way they may pick a dry cleaner, like, oh, it's close.
Right. It's right down the street. Right?
Right, just
And
down the
sometimes
street.
that's fine.
Yeah, if you want your shirts cleaned. So what do you look for? How has this changed your approach, and what are some tips that you have found in terms of looking for a veterinarian?
Well, our most recent veterinarian, I actually found, this is kind of funny. Penny and I share the same chiropractor. Our chiropractor, she treats
What?
people and animals.
Wow.
And so I know how much I know how she cares for her animals. So I had asked her, who she goes to, and that was kind of how the word of mouth referral. So if you can get some kind of word of mouth referral from somebody who you already know, is treating their dogs in the same way that you want your dogs to be treated, I think that's number one. Another good tip, if there's like a local independent dog food store near you, that would sell goat milk and things like that. Usually, the the owners of those stores are paying attention to these kinds of things also. I've gotten, great recommendations from our pet store owners also. And I'm a big believer, and we've seen great results with Penny using ozone treatments for her condition. And so that's another thing I would look for is if a vet is offering, I think there's like an Ozone Vets website, and you can find out through them who's using their treatments. So that would be like something I would look for.
What is the ozone treatment benefits for Penny?
Well, she has, I don't even know if we've ever gotten a really clear diagnosis on it. We've just kind of treated it like it was autoimmune. But she had these they start out as like these little sores on her foot, and then all of a sudden it was like taking over all of her feet and up her legs. And so we actually did like the fecal microbiome transplants with her, which they use.
We got to break that down for our listeners. Fecal microbiome transplant.
Yes.
It is exactly what it sounds like. You are
yes,
transplanting
it's like a poop enema.
Poop enema, yeah. From a
healthy dog into your dog's, because she had gone through several rounds of antibiotic treatments, and it had really thrown her gut health off.
Okay.
And so this was how we were able to restore it.
Okay. So my next question has to be this chiropractor. Tell me paint the picture of what a chiropractic visit is when you and your pit bull stop by for an adjustment with the dog.
Well, unfortunately, we can't go at the same time because due to various health regulations, you can't bring pets into the people office.
Okay, so your chiropractor has two offices.
Yes, she has a people office, and then she has different vet offices where she'll go to treat the dogs.
Okay, that's fascinating. I think we need to interview her. So tell me, what's this doctor's name?
Dr. Jean Thompson.
Okay. And so Jean Thompson started as a human chiropractor or doggy chiropractor?
People.
Okay. And so you go in, you get your adjustment. Well, which came first? Did you discover Jean as your chiropractor or as your dog?
First. I actually found her for Penny first through some friends of mine. And then I'm like, oh, you treat people all too? Awesome.
I have this long-held belief that people are will do more for their dogs than they will for themselves, and I think that's pretty extraordinary. So your dog effectively gave you a recommendation to her chiropractor. Yes. That's good.
Fair statement.
So what does Dr. Jean do for your dog?
Well, she's right down on the ground with them. And I mean, she will go right down their spine and check the alignments and check their neck and their paws and their hips. Penny has, we think, an old hip injury from before I got her. So we're always sort of working on that. And it's really, I can tell the difference, in her when we go. I can definitely see the difference in her gait and how she walks. She'll walk faster and better, and sometimes she'll have almost like a little limp or hobble, and that will go away when she's had a treatment.
Now, I know that you are working on an e-commerce website, something else outside of but related to dogs.
Yes. It's called hugsandbellyrubs.com. I end all of my podcasts sending hugs and belly rubs. So that's where that name came from. And I'm creating some of my own products that are kind of sentimental for people to help them document their journeys with their dogs. And it's still kind of all in the planning stages, but that's what's on the horizon.
Cool. And so what is the future for your show? What do you see?
I hope to just keep doing what I'm doing. One of the things I love to be able to do is have these roundtable episodes where I'll bring back past guests and we'll all kind of dive deeper into a topic. We did one on like shy and fearful dogs. We did some with some animal welfare workers. So I really enjoyed doing that. So I love, doing single guest episodes and then kind of bringing them all back at the same time to kind of let everybody get into a conversation together. And it's been really great.
What kind of feedback have you had? You've been doing this for a couple of years now to your show.
I really love people that reach out and tell me their own story. Maybe they don't want to be a guest on the podcast, but they have a dog that changed their life. And Maybe I know I'm thinking of somebody right now who started a raw dog food company because of her dog's allergies. And she didn't even want to be a guest, but she just wanted to tell me, like, I get this. This is me also. And I've had people, who've heard the podcast about like the Shy and Fearful episode, and we ended up doing a whole second episode because we actually brought a trainer on and we kind of walked through how to work with Shy and Fearful dogs with another guest. And so I love taking, feedback from the audience and finding a way to work that into the podcast also.
So we live in a universe now where what they say there are millions of podcasts out
I'm
there.
sure.
What does that feel like when you're in such a there's so much attention, people trying to get the attention of podcast listeners, much less dog lovers who are podcast listeners?
Well, I guess I just feel like I have really heart-centered conversations with people. I think there's a lot of great dog training podcasts, and this is how to help your dog with this or that. And I guess I just really want to hear people's stories. And I always say I'm kind of an introvert. I'm not a great like mingler at parties, but if you want to have a deep, meaningful conversation about something really hard that you had to overcome, I'm your girl. And if that's something that's interesting to you, that's what my podcast is about.
That is funny. I am too. I'm also an introvert. And people are like, no, you're not. I'm like, I am. Why do you suppose introverts do podcasts?
I think maybe because we can go deeper on topics. We're not, I might not be great at, hey, how's the weather? How about those Orioles? But like I said, if you want to sit down and really talk about, your life and the decisions that you made and how your dogs have impacted that and where that has taken you, I'm just sort of endlessly curious about those kinds of things. And I hope other people will be too.
Yeah. And I think there's also the intimacy of the medium, because it's something that people are listening to usually with headphones or, in their car when they're by themselves. And it feels like a very intimate conversation.
Right.
So as you look beyond like doing more podcasts and doing this e-commerce business, any thoughts, or just keep doing more of this and then working on your secret hugs and belly rubs e-commerce site?
I just sort of trust the dogs will take me where I'm needed. I do a lot of volunteer work in Baltimore, so I always want to make sure I have time to do that also, because that's a huge priority for me. And I just sort of trust that the dogs will lead me to the next steps, or at least that's how it's worked out for the last since 2004.
Erin Scott, that is awesome. Your podcast is Believe in Dogs, and the website is
believeindogpodcast.com.
Pretty easy. I want to thank you for joining us today on Dog Lovers Live. This is part of our series that we're doing this summer to introduce you to other podcasts and other YouTube channels and shows that you may find interesting if you're a dog lover and listen to some of the shows on Dog Podcast Network. And speaking of Dog Podcast Network, please do tune in to our flagship show, which is called Dog Edition, or a conversation show that we have called The Long Leash. We also have a show called Dog Cancer Answers. And I always tell people that is the show that I'm really sorry that you have to listen to, but it is tremendously helpful. It's actually been on for many, many years at this point. And it is a show designed to help people who are dealing with cancer and their dogs manage the myriad choices and options. And if you have a question for that, you should check out dogcanceranswers.com, and you can actually leave a voicemail message, and we will have one of our we have a team of veterinarians who regularly appear on the show, answer that question, and there's a whole bunch of stuff there. So those are some of the shows that we have at Dog Podcast Network now. More shows are being added, like Dog Health Nerd. I think that's funny that you said that, Erin.
I love that.
That's great. And so we're doing more shows and working on it. We are also hiring. If you want to join us, visit our website at dogpodcastnetwork.com. And of course, subscribe to any episode so that you can always have it in your podcast catcher, whatever you use, Spotify or Apple or Google or anything. Well, Erin Scott, again, thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you for having me. It was a lot of fun and a real pleasure.
Thank you. Take care, everyone. Aloha.